I'm starting. Hi, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Roguelike celebration. Thanks for coming. It's a nice, it's an intimate crowd, so definitely please feel free. We'll do it a little bit interactive, right? I mean, why not? We got. If we can do it, we should do it. My name is George Moromisato, founder of Combinatorial Productions. I've got a couple of games: Anacreon, Chronex, Transcendence. Today, I'm going to talk about Nethack. Nethack in particular is something that inspired Transcendence. And I just, when I played it back when I was, 20 years old, I just loved it so much that I wanted to essentially create a game that was just like it. I'm going to let people file in.
Yeah, wow. Looks like everybody will be like, hold on, this was not the one I wanted to see.
Well, welcome. All right, this is not going to be interactive.
Welcome to room 2 for Roguelike celebration. Now we got to try.
All right, let me start again. Welcome once again to the Roguelike celebration. My name is George Moromisato, founder of Combinatorial Productions. I've got a couple games that I've created: Anacreon, Chronex, Transcendence, and I'm going to talk today about Nethack. In particular, Nethack, when I was 20 years old, just inspired me to create Transcendence because just the richness, just how amazing Nethack is. You guys probably all know. It just made me want to create a game just like it, and that's I think what I tried to do in Transcendence. So that's what I'm going to do this talk. But first, a confession, a very quick confession. When I said Nethack inspired me to create Transcendence, I might have said I copied Nethack. And in fact, if you think about all the games that I've created, I may have been inspired by a lot of other games. In fact, every single game that I've created, I kind of have a pattern. I just add sci-fi. That's my pattern. So, Anacreon, I started this with this game called Empire, which was, I love this game. It's kind of one of the first 4X games. I played it on a mainframe, believe it or not. And I said, hey, add sci-fi. We'll do it out in space. Galactic Conquest. Awesome. Magic the Gathering in the 90s. I thought amazing game. Just super awesome rules. Richard Garriott, I think, just did an amazing design. Hey, add sci-fi, cyberpunk, dystopian world, it's all on the computer, so hey, we get stealth and other stuff. Chronex. Come 2000, I said, Nethack, oh, I love Nethack, I remember how awesome it is. I'm going to do Transcendence. I'm just going to add sci-fi, it's going to be out in space, it's going to be, instead of dungeons, it's going to be star systems. Awesome. And now by this time, I think I've gotten a little bit better at being inspired, at copying. So it's not quite the same. It's a little bit different. I think I've taken what I think are some of the key elements that make Nethack amazing, some of the core principles, and I tried to pull them into Transcendence. It didn't always work. There are many cases where I tried to take something that just works beautifully in Nethack, and when I put it in Transcendence, it just doesn't work. And so as a game designer, trying to analyze, why it works sometimes, why it doesn't work other times, what's so cool about Nethack, why is it that, this part in Nethack works, that just helped me to grow and learn as a game designer. So a lot of this talk is going to be, I'm going to take some of those key principles that I learned from Nethack, and talk about how I tried to translate them into Transcendence. So let me just very quickly show you a quick trailer of Transcendence, just so you can get an idea of what Transcendence is all about. So again, exploration. Transcendence is all about, just like Nethack, it's exploration. You just kind of wander around the galaxy. It's open world. Instead of shops and stuff, you get stations. Instead of monsters, you fight ships. Your ship is your character. You upgrade it. There's deities, that you worship, or at least who control you and that you get powers from. There's stairs. Stargates are really just stairs to go to the next level. And of course, there's just a lot of battles with different types of weapons, with different types of armors, different types of equipment, different type of items. Excuse me. So a lot of that, here, list of different items, boss levels, looting, opening up treasure chests, all that stuff. That's all that stuff I kind of lifted from Nethack, and for the most part, it worked. I mean, a lot of this just really works. That's, I think, a testament to the cool stuff about Nethack. I didn't time my talk. So I'll talk about kind of how some of the things in Nethack turned into some of the things that you saw here, and where it worked and where it didn't work. That's kind of what this presentation is about. So let's start with, well, okay, what is so awesome about Nethack? Well, you guys probably know, but let me say why I think it's awesome about Nethack. Let's flip back to, let's say, the 1980s, late 1980s, 87 is when Nethack came out. I thought, when I was doing research for this, I thought that Nethack actually came a lot earlier, kind of back in the, when basically there was no other games other than character mode games. But it's not true. Nethack came out, around the same time as Ultima. Not Ultima 5, probably Ultima 4, which I think is one of the key Ultimas. But I remember Ultima 5. And think about it. You're a kid back then, and you're thinking, hey, I got Ultima, I got Nethack, I got Ultima. Which should I play? Which should I play? Look at the graphics in this. It's highly produced. It's all this stuff. And yet, we all know there's something about Nethack. It has a certain depth. It has a certain, replayability. Once you're finished with Ultima, you're finished. You are never finished with Nethack. I think if you're someone that's a Nethack addict and you love just working on the mechanics, you play Nethack and you're done with Ultima. So to me, that's so interesting that even back then, we had kind of this AAA versus indie divide, right? Even way back then, this is a AAA game. Ultima is a AAA game. It's got just huge production values. Origin was a giant company. Nethack is a tiny little indie game. Now, I'm not saying here, absolutely not saying that Nethack is better than Ultima or vice versa. They're different, right? They're different. They both focus on different things. I love playing Ultima. I love playing AAA games today, but I love Nethack too. So what is it? What is it? What's different about these two things? And let me try to distill it down to these three things. Ultima here is on the left, and Nethack is on the right. Graphical immersion versus interactive immersion. I think all of you guys know what that means, right? AAA games focus on just having it be beautifully, so you feel like you're in that world. Everything looks real. Nethack doesn't care about that, and other roguelikes, Dwarf Fortress, all those. They don't care. They care about interactive immersion. They care that when you do something, when you pick something up, when you use something, that it behaves the way you expect it to behave, that you feel like you're actually manipulating all these objects. Quality versus variety. Again, in something like Ultima, the set of monsters is fairly small, right, relative to Nethack. And that's because they want to focus every single monster. They want to be as high quality as possible. They want to have an animation, a frame for all of them. They want to make sure that they've spent a lot of time getting each monster to be exactly right. They balance the the stats, everything. Nethack is the opposite. Now, again, I'm not saying that one is better than the other, right? I mean, sometimes you want this graphical immersion, but Nethack does it differently. They say no. We just want so many monsters that it's different every time, and that whenever you go someplace, you can encounter something new. Lastly, experience versus mastery. I think this kind of sums it up in a way. The AAA games and Ultima and things like that are about having this experience, going through this adventure, and then when you're done, you're done. You had the experience. You're done. You went skydiving? Okay, you're done. You're not going to skydive the rest of your life. Most of us. Nethack is the opposite. It's about mastery. Any one game, it doesn't really matter that much. It's about how good you get, how you figure out that last bit of combinations, how you start to see patterns and say, oh, yeah, I get it. No, I know how to get out of this situation. Mastery is the enjoyment that you get out of Nethack, the idea that you've figured out this complex world. So that's I think one of the big differences. So flash forward to today, the 2000s. Skyrim is absolutely, Ultima now, 20 years later or whatever. It's again beautiful. I love it. I love playing it. Open world, the whole thing. And yet people are still playing Nethack. Nethack is still being developed. There is still room for things like Nethack. This is what I think is amazing about Nethack. So let me take now. That was kind of the overview of why I love Nethack. Let me go dive a little bit more. Here's another reason why Nethack is so good, right? Yet another stupid death, right? This is I don't know if Nethack started the concept of yet another stupid death. David Craddock in the other talk probably will be telling us if that's true. But you know, yet another stupid death I think is a key component of Nethack, and it plays into all three of those things that I talked about, right? People at first I think get upset, or when they first play Nethack, they're like, I died, you know. But eventually you realize that Nethack has this amazing quality, this illusion of winnability. Right? This is, and I think you guys will all agree with me that when you play Nethack and you die, you always say, oh, I should have X, Y, and Z. Oh, I shouldn't have, you know, I shouldn't have attacked. I knew I should have retreated. Or, oh, I had a, you know, wand of blah, 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 blah. I should have used that. The beauty about Nethack is that even though it kills you all the time, anytime it kills you, it lets you know exactly why you die. And so you loop back and you say, okay, you know, I'm not going to do that again. Now I know, now I've mastered it. Now I've mastered it again until the next time you die. If you think about Civilization or some of those, you know, 4X games, the addiction, the addict's cry in Civilization is one more turn, right? In Nethack, it's one more game, and this time I'm not going to be stupid. You know, this time I'm going to get it. So how does Nethack do this? How does Nethack, you know, have all these different ways to die, illusion of winnability? Because if you think about it, when Nethack is turn-based, right? So at any given point, it's an open book test. You can just stand there, you can think through all the possible things, and you can say, okay, you know, this is the best move. Why is it so hard? The reason it's so hard is because this combinatorial explosion, the number of items that you have to deal with, the number of verbs that you have to deal with each item, just are so large that it's hard to even think about it. Something like chess has that same kind of combinatorial explosion, but it's because of depth, right? Chess only has 6 pieces, you know, 6 unique pieces. So at any point in a game, you kind of, it's pretty easy to figure out what's going to happen. It's just that it's really, really hard 4 or 5 moves ahead of time. Nethack, even in one move, you know, in one move, it's kind of hard to know what the right move was, because there are just so many items, there's so many monsters, there's so many capabilities. So that concept of combinatorial complexity, I think, is one of the key things that makes Nethack just a rich game, a deep game, something that you always come back to, and again, something that reinforces that concept of mastery rather than experience. Okay, now, of course, one of the problems with some of this combinatorial complexity is that you end up in, well, you just have to read the guide. You know, you get into situations where you just don't know the optimum thing, so you just search on Google. There wasn't Google in the 80s, but now there is. Go on Google and say, okay, what is the best way? And now you kind of get out of it. That, to a certain extent, takes away, I think, from some of the pleasure of Nethack. But I think these guys have still done a good job, because the places where you actually need to do this is called guide dang it. From the TV Tropes calls this guide dang it. When you've got a game mechanic that basically the way to win is you just look up what the answer is. And fortunately, Nethack actually minimizes this a lot. There's many places where Nethack, you know, you would think that you'd have to be able to just search online, but it's actually, it doesn't. And the way it works, the reason it works very well is because Nethack kind of relies on your knowledge of the world already, right? So I'll give you an example. You know that when you see a dragon, for instance, you know it's going to be immune to fire, right? This is not, you know that if you have a scroll and you dip it in water, you know that, well, okay, it's going to get wet and the ink might run. You know that if you dip a sword in water, it's, you know, could rust. And so Nethack uses your common knowledge, the knowledge that you already have, to make sure that you never get into, or rarely get into, situations of guide dang it, where you're like, wait a minute, you know, why did that ray bounce off of the dragon? Oh, right, you know. It tries to use that knowledge that you already have, that implicit knowledge. And that's why I think the developers worked so hard that whenever someone tried something, a player tried something in Nethack that they expected to work, you know, the developers made sure that it did work the way that you would expect it. It's because they wanted to avoid the concept of guide dang it. This is something I struggle with in Transcendence. In Transcendence, You know, it's a space game, so it's not quite as close to our everyday experience, right? Do plasma bolts bounce off of magnetic shields or not? You know, I don't know. So Transcendence has had trouble in some of this stuff, and if I try to just, you know, put some directly from Nethack and translate it into Transcendence terms, it doesn't work for the reasons that I just said, because people don't have that implicit knowledge. So I've had to be aware of that and then change that. So let me talk about now some of the complexity of Nethack. Okay, an exaggeration, please. If anyone loves Diablo or worked on Diablo, I love Diablo. But again, there's a little bit of truth, right? Diablo, they have a single verb, which is you click on an object, and the object does its default behavior. You click on a skeleton, you attack it. You click on a chest, it opens. You click on a door, it opens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It makes sense why they did that, because if you're, you know, a new player and you want to understand, you know, you want to play this game without having to learn a giant manual. Tarn Adams isn't here, right? No, okay. If you want to play a game without having to like read the manual, then this is the way you do it. You basically just restrict the set of verbs so that the players can, you know, just play essentially without having to learn. Look at Nethack. Now, obviously, the advantage of Nethack is all this set of verbs combined with all the items, combined with all the monsters, gives you that combinatorial complexity and makes it so that, you know, it's a deep game. But how do they avoid this? Well, one of the ways they avoid it, and again, this is another thing I'm learning in Transcendence and trying to, you know, apply, is, well, look, most of the verbs you actually don't use. They've done the user interface correctly so that if you look at it, many of those verbs are in secondary or tertiary menus, right? I mean, something like sit, I think, is not a key command. It's a you know, pound sign type sit. The key command in Nethack is just move, right? And when you run into something, you attack it. And if you're a newbie player and that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing. You can get pretty far with that until you run into a closed door, and then, well, okay, now you got to figure out how to open a door. But that's okay. That's, you know, then you kind of learn one little bit more, and then, you know, for secret doors, okay, now I got to search. But the advantage of that is they reveal it slowly. You know, they bit by bit. And when you do come into an item like, you know, a lamp, you start to say, whoa, a lamp. I wonder if I can rub it, right? Again, we have the common knowledge of what lamps can do, and, you know, so you want to rub it. And so now you look in the manual and say, okay, is there a way to rub lamps? Oh yeah, there's a command. So now you got it. So in a way, again, Nethack kind of has the best of both worlds. It tries to support its massive complexity without making it so difficult for the user. Now, that's what leads, I think, to another one of the famous Nethack quotes, which is the dev team thinks of everything. You guys all know, I'm sure, about, you know, the things like the cockatrice and Nethack, where there's just all sorts of combinations. You know, you can use the cockatrice corpse to turn people to stone, but only if you've got a metal glove, because otherwise you'll turn to stone when you wield it. But if you fall and trip, then the cockatrice hits you. So all those things, every single one of those things, every single one of those combinations, developers had to figure out essentially, you know, well, what's the right thing what's the right thing that'll happen in this situation, and then code it up. You know, write code. For you guys who are indie developers, you know how hard that is. You know how hard it is for every single one of those combinations to code something specific and say, okay, when this, and this happens, you know, this is what happens, and you type it in. It takes forever. It's amazing. Again, another one of the things that these guys have done, which helps, which I've stolen from Transcendence, is reduce things to attributes just to make it a little bit more manageable. So it's not that they try to say, well, okay, you know, magic leather armor, blah, 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 against, you know, this sword does this kind of combination. Or if you dip, you know, a dagger into this, you know, poison, you get that combination. Instead, they reduce it down into attributes. Things are made out of material. So there's metal, there's leather, there's wood, you know, and a lot of the items you can just say, okay, these are all the metal items, these are all the wood items, and then they just program in the pieces, the interaction between metal, you know, and wood, between metal and water, between this and that. Same thing with attributes for monsters. You know, there's fire resistance. There's, you know, there's a limited number of kind of attributes which they combine, and so they focus on the attributes, and that helps you to kind of, as a developer team, you know, be seen as the developer thinks of everything, because you just kind of covered some of these basic cases. It's still a ton of work. It's still a ton of work, because even then you have like all these edge conditions, but it becomes more manageable. It becomes something that's possible in a human lifetime. Okay, I'm not proud. I'm going to have a picture of my dog, and just to get people to watch my presentation. Why not? This is a slight story behind this. So this is my dog Hilo. When we were training my dog, he would just pull, squirrel, blah, whatever. And so we go to the trainer. Dog pulls all the time. Hilo pulls all the time. Why? It's like, well, because it works, right? I mean, from Hilo's perspective, he's like, oh, I see something. He pulls. We're like, ugh, and he gets it. Success. He's solved the game. He's figured out the game. He just has to pull, and he gets what he wants, right? So how do we fix this? How do we fix this? Well, easy. Whenever he pulls, we just don't let him go. We don't let him go, because then now he'll get the idea that, okay, if he pulls, he's not going to get what he wants. Didn't work. Didn't work at all. The exact opposite happened. Now he pulled even harder. He pulls even harder. And again, this is obvious, right? This is obvious. Why is this? It's because he now is getting variable rewards. He's getting, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And when it's a case like that, now it's a slot machine. Right? Now it's like, it's when it does work, it's like, oh my God, it worked! And it reinforces that behavior for the next time. So this concept of variable rewards, super important. That's why the RNG always wins. The random number generator in Nethack, and this is why another brilliant thing about Nethack is that bit of randomness, that idea of variable rewards. When you open up a chest, you don't know what's in it. Could be nothing, could be something, could be a wand of wishing. But when it's a wand of wishing, it's like, woohoo! And now you're incented to do it. You keep on, and you keep on coming back. And you play another game because you think, this time I'm going to find that wand of wishing. This time it's going to show up. Now, Nethack, again, uses that technique, that mechanic, as part of a complete game design, meaning it's not a slot machine, right? It uses it responsibly. You can obviously take this way too far, and where that becomes the only mechanic, and then it doesn't work, or maybe it does work, but it's probably wrong that it works. But in Nethack, used responsibly, which they do, it works beautifully. It's yet another one of those things that make Nethack something that you go back to again and again and again. If only they'd monetized it. Could have been free to play, like all those years ago. Okay, another thing. This is the set of ships and stations in Transcendence. Again, lots of them. There's some that are too tiny even to see, just in this particular scale. But my point here is, this is the same. This is another one of the things that I kind of learned from Nethack, is that it's not enough to just have a small set of things. In order to get that combinatorial complexity, in order to get enough interest and get players to come back for mastery, you need a whole bunch of these things. Rogue started out with 26 monsters, right? One for each letter of the alphabet. The people did hack. They're like, that's not enough monsters. 26, that's not enough. They did 52. They started using lowercase letters. And then Nethack, of course, said, colors. We can have even more than 52. Now they've got hundreds, right? And that's part of the awesomeness of Nethack. That it's not just, again, it's not just the quality of one single attack or one single core loop or one single thing. It's about the variety. It's about just experiencing this breadth of things. And for Nethack, it's not just monsters. It's also levels, right? I mean, you've got different kinds of levels, Vlad's Tower, the maze, all these different things. And when you think about the developers and kind of how they think about, okay, what do we do to make Nethack better? It's almost always, let's add one more experience, one more thing that people can see, one more thing that people think they should be able to do in Nethack. They still have limits. They try to, it's not like they throw the kitchen sink. Well, they did throw the kitchen. It's not like they throw, everything into it. I read in one of the histories that for instance, one of the Nethack developers wanted to add a Jedi class, and coded up a Jedi class. There was a lightsaber. You had to find batteries, on the levels to power your lightsaber. But the other developers were like, doesn't quite fit. So they cut it. I don't know. Was that a good idea? I don't know. I don't know if that was a good idea or not. So my point is, quantity itself can be quality. quantity of the things you can experience, of the things that you can do, that itself is a reason why we play these games. It's a reason why we play Nethack, is because it has all these monsters. Rogue sparked off this immense revolution, but how many of us play Rogue now? It's a little bit more constrained. It evolved into all these other games, and you can see that the ones that we end up playing, whether it's Nethack or whatever, those end up being the ones that we play because they have this just amazing breadth. Okay, so I've got about 5 minutes. I'm gonna close quickly with basically just some, going back through all that I've talked about, all those different things that Nethack has, and how we've tried to adapt them. Some quick lessons for indie developers. I know not all of you are indie developers, but this will be very quick. To go back to the first, one of the first slides, do that side. I mean, if you have $100 million, do this side. That's absolutely. If you have $100 million, actually, I take it back. If you have, because I'm not at all creative. If you're like Jonathan Blow and you can do braid, this is okay too. If you have just this brilliant idea for just a brilliant experience, this is okay too. This works. This works for indie games. For me, I'm just not that creative. This works. That side works. And when you think about why Nethack has lasted all these years, I think a lot of it is that. Okay, next, build a city instead of a resort. This is another great thing about Nethack. A lot of the AAA experience, a lot of the kind of single experiences, they're a resort. That you know exactly what's going to happen. The experience is very well controlled. Nethack is slightly different. It's not afraid of adding stuff on, even if it doesn't quite fit, but whatever. It's a good idea. It's not afraid of having everything be perfect. It's because, again, it's all about the breadth. You play Nethack, and you kind of expect that, it's going to be different in some places. I mean, the difference between the maze level and, something else, the mishmash of all the different classes, having a quantum mechanic, attacking a vampire, it's kind of crazy. It's like you wouldn't do that at a resort. But in a city, in something that's living and breathing, that's accreting through time, that's being built right before your eyes, essentially, it works. And that, I think, is another thing that is great about Nethack and that I've tried to do in Transcendence. Now, of course, that takes time. That takes a lot of time. Nethack has been in development for decades. Even Transcendence has been in development for at least a decade. And to me, I plan on working this for the rest of my life. I really think that building this, building that kind of a city, building that kind of a rich, deep experience is something that I just love. And if Transcendence, if I can get even close to, even a tenth as good as Nethack by the time I die, I'll be happy. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Maybe a minute for questions or no? Maybe a few minutes for questions if anyone's got them. If not, that's all cool. Please.
So you use six different qualities of games. You said that there was like 2 different sides. Could you do something like picking? I'm going to pick quality and interactive immersion and mastery.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, sorry. The question is. So here I've shown basically 6 qualities, and I've basically said that these 3 go together, those 3 go together. And the question is, well, is that true? Really? Could you just mix and match? Could you just say, I'll take that, and that? It's a great question, and I'll be honest, I don't know. I think so. I think that'll work. I know some of these are kind of reinforcing, right? Interactive immersion kind of goes with mastery. But at the same time, I do think of these. This is a little too hardcore hardcore. Really, it's a slider, right? Really, there's a slider there, and you can say, well, I want a little bit more graphical immersion, a little bit more interactive immersion. Same with quality. I mean, you don't want crap, and lots of it. That also doesn't work. So it's a great question. The balance and figuring out when you can pull from one for the other, when it's not enough quality, when it's not enough experience, not enough graphical. That's, I think, what a designer, I think a good game designer is going to have to figure out. So, but thank you. That's a great question. Thank you, guys. Oh, sorry.
All right, well, hello everybody. So my name is Alexi, and I'm here to talk about accessibility for visually impaired players within the roguelike genre. Specifically, I'm going to talk about some research that I did with Dr. John Aycock at the University of Calgary, which is in Alberta, Canada, if you're not familiar with it, on this topic and kind of what we learned and the work that we did. So to give some background on this, video games